Hello, my name's Sam, and about a month ago, I had a tumor removed from my brain while I was awake. Let's get into it. The purpose of these videos is to plot my journey through this weird and horrible world of gliomas and grade 4 astrocytomas over the next, hopefully years, but what could be months for my life, and try and humanize this story, because I found, as I have been trying to read and learn and listen about this disease, there's not much information out there from a first-hand point of view. So that's what I'm going to talk about here, and we're going to start with what happened to me on that fateful Friday about 1 month ago. So, the morning of Friday, February 17th, 2023 was a normal day like me. I am a business owner here in New York, and I keep a very, very, very regular schedule. I get to the gym around 7:30 a.m. I come back about 8:30 a.m. I get my lunch ready, the same thing I have every single day, and I'm out the door at 9:30. At around 10:15, my girlfriend came back from the gym, and I made some sort of odd noise from our study. She came in and I was kind of lost in a trance. I was putting on a couple of different t-shirts. There was clothes everywhere. I looked at her. She tried to talk to me and I couldn't actually speak to her. Nothing was happening. And then I went into a full tonic-clonic seizure. If you don't know about those, it's basically where the whole body convulses. Sometimes you can bite your tongue. I didn't, but I came down. She caught me. She brought me down to the ground, and I had the tonic-clonic seizure right in front of her. Now, I've never had a seizure before in my life, and at the same time, I hadn't remembered anything. I don't remember none of this, right? So she called an ambulance. The ambulance came over. By the time they got here, I would say probably 10 minutes later, because we're right around the corner, I was coming out of the seizure and kind of coming back to life. I still don't remember anything at this point. The ambulance came in, they got me out, they actually wheeled me into the ambulance. I got myself into the back of the ambulance. They tried to talk to me there. They asked me, "Who are you?" I had no idea who I was. They asked me who she was. I had no idea who she was either. I was making funny faces. And then at that point, they were trying to put me in a different hospital and they wanted us to pick one. I am not natively from America. I'm from Australia. So I don't really understand the way the healthcare system works here. But we were going to pick one. And that's when I had the second seizure. At this point, they took me straight to Wyckoff Hospital down in Bushwick around here. That was probably about half an hour later. I was there. That's when I start to come to. I'm lying on a bed. People are yelling around me. I have no idea where I am. And I'm just trying to get myself out of this chair. I was yelling at, "Get off me!" People are screaming at me. You don't know who you are. You're completely confused. They hit me with a sedative at some point. And then I was out for the next probably at least 12 hours while they were doing studies. They were putting me in the hospital. They couldn't see Susie, so she had to go home. She was very, very, very scared. And that's when they started doing all the MRIs. They're checking whether I'm on drugs, that sort of thing. At this point, I had no idea what was happening. I just assumed maybe I'd hit my head or something. This is probably in the early hours of Saturday a.m. I remember seeing Susie the next morning. I was like, "What's going on? Can I just go home, please?" They wouldn't let me home. It was very, very scary. At a certain point, someone came in and they said, "We think that you might have a mass or a lesion on your brain." And I had no idea what that meant at all. Little did I know at that point, there's another hospital up on the Upper East Side, and a very, very talented and gifted neurosurgeon was doing coverage there randomly on that day. He saw my MRI, and he made the executive decision to get me out of Bushwick and get to the Upper East Side so we can get some actual care and see what's happening about this lesion or mass. Remember, at this point, I had no idea what was going on, but it seemed to be getting a little more serious, and I was getting, obviously, very, very, very scared. So they took me up to the Upper East Side. They put me through some MRIs. They put a dye in you, and it basically lights up a part of the lesion or the mass, so they can see it better, an enhanced image on the MRI. I still didn't know what was happening. This was Saturday evening now. I stayed overnight in the Upper East Side. On Sunday morning, the doctor came in and he basically walked in, he sat down, he looked me in the eye and he said, "So, we have found a lesion on your brain. It's a mass. It's on your left temporal lobe. And we have to take it out and you have to be awake while we do it." At this point, I was just honestly in shock. I was like, what? And also, what? I have to be awake while they do it? Now, they were trying to get me in as fast as humanly possible. This seemed like this is 2 days later, right? And they're like, "We want to get you in ASAP." But Monday was a holiday. They weren't sure whether they can send me home because of my insurance. So it was touch and go there for a little while. They said you could stay through the long weekend. We could try to get you in that week. Or you can go home for a week. We think it'll be fine. And then you can come in. Thankfully, they let me go. I had a party I wanted to go to. I needed to get my head straight about this before they were going to be cutting out of a part of my brain while I was awake. The following 2 weeks was very scary. Obviously, I had to tell my family. They're in Australia. Some of them came over here. We had a meeting with the doctor on Tuesday. At that point, he said it's probably a grade 2 or 3. I didn't know what that meant, but he started using words like quality of life is the most important, right? Now, quality of life is one of the most terrifying phrases that you can hear when a doctor is talking to you, because what I heard with that is that I'm going to die soon, and it's more important for me to live a life that is short and better than longer and worse, given my condition. So I was terrified, I was horrified, my family was mortified. That the whole thing was very, very stressful, obviously. But I took those 2 weeks to really focus on what am I doing, right? I looked into this awake surgery, and actually that's a best case scenario, because it means that they can map the lesion or the tumor part of the brain, and while they are testing you while you're awake, they can get as close to the edges as possible. It's basically like a GPS or like a 3D map. So they can see the tumor. They give you another like enhancement, this dye, so it kind of lights up like a Christmas tree. I remember the morning of the surgery, which was Monday 2 weeks ago, 5 a.m. I got in. You admit yourself, you go up into the operating room. They give you the dye, they give you the injections, all that sort of stuff. You walk yourself into the operating room. It was one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had in my entire life, because you don't usually see what's happening behind the scenes of an operating room. So you walk yourself on, you lie down. They knew that the tumor was here, so I had to lie on my side like this. They start giving you the drugs, and then it takes about 20 minutes for you to fall asleep, right? While I'm asleep, they are cutting open a flap from my head, which kind of opens up like that. And then they drill a hole through the actual skull. They take that out, and then they can see the actual tumor. That's when they wake you up. You're underneath like a tent. There's a neuropsychologist there with you, and they're putting you through like a battery of questions. It was actually quite funny for me because they said, Sam, get up. And I was like, oh no, I missed it. And they said, no, you didn't. And I was like, whoa. And I was awake in the middle of this operating room. You're locked in place. You're kind of a little high from the drugs. Took another maybe 10 or 15 minutes for me to wake up, and they start putting you through the tests. So it's like, Sam is wearing a hat on his head, or whatever it is. It's like that kind of thing. And they just go through that, and they try and make sure you're not saying, oh, I'm putting shoes on my head, or I'm wearing an orange shirt, or whatever it is. And they just talk. I was actually having a really, really good time because it was surreal. It was a singular experience of my life. And I figured that if I was going to do this, I wanted to do this right. Now, that takes about, I'm making up these numbers, but it was around about 40 minutes of the mapping of it, right? At that point, there's two options. They can either knock you out, or they can go for the cut while you're awake. It depends on the patient, depends on how calm you are, how you're responsive, where it is. Mine's quite lucky in that it's like up closer to the top, so it's easier to get to. So they decided to go for it because I was into it and, having a good time. It doesn't feel like anything. It's like pressure. It feels like getting a cyst taken out, kind of. And it honestly felt very quick. I think it was maybe 45 minutes all in. The surgery proper started at I think around 5:45 was my admission, 8 a.m. and then I was back in the ICU by 11:30 a.m. The biggest worry right after that is, how are you going to wake up with deficits, right? What if the knife misses? What if we hit the wrong thing? What if I can't speak? What if I can't stand? Because obviously that's very delicate areas, right? Thankfully, because this guy is a great surgeon, and also on top of that, I was really trying my hardest. I'm very lucky in many, many ways. I was fine. My catheter was completely broken, and that was a whole other journey I went on. But I felt like myself. I had a little bit of aphasia. Aphasia is where you can't quite remember words, but that had more to do with the swelling of the brain than it did with any kind of actual damage to the proper part of the brain. So all in all, it was an amazing success as far as these things go. So I was in hospital for about 3 days. They put you through a battery of tests, can you put your arm up, can you touch your nose, that thing, what's your name, blah, blah, blah. Again, the catheter was a giant nightmare for me, but eventually we got out. I was at home for a couple of days. We fixed all that up. And then you start your drug regimen. So I'm on Keppra, 1,000 milligrams per day. That is an anti-seizure drug. I'm on steroids to make the swelling of my brain go down. I have some painkillers. I have some GI stuff, which I need to eat every morning because otherwise the steroids will give you stomach ulcers. And then you just got to try and get used to it. The hardest thing for me has really been the sleeping, right? Particularly in the mornings. You get more and more information about these things, and it really dawns on you, as you're starting to heal, you feel kind of normal, right? But it's not normal because I have what we now know is a grade 4 astrocytoma, diffuse. That's World Health Organization grading. But I have this thing called an IDH mutant. So on a scale of these things, they recently moved them all around. So I'm second to worst. The worst would be a glioblastoma, which is if it's a wild type mutant, and then me, and then you go 3, 2, whatever. But these things are aggressive. They are incurable currently. And they are absolutely life-destroying. Anyway, this is my first video, and the point of this is tomorrow I'm talking with my oncologist, and on Wednesday we're talking to the surgery team. And I just wanted to kick this off and kind of tell my story a little bit, introduce myself, and we'll follow each other on this journey, and hopefully we can learn something. Hopefully I can share this with other people, because it's a very lonely, scary, terrifying road, and I think community is the most important part about this. So thank you so much. I will be in touch later this week with more information. Have a good day.